one of the things I do most now is talking about food safety. And I know you guys are thinking, what on earth? I'm a starting business, I'm going to sell at a farmer's market. What on earth has food safety got to do with what the heck I'm trying to do here? Okay? But I would encourage you, I will tell you that you should, even if you're not going to sell to a retailer, I would encourage you strongly to think about food safety in your operations. I would encourage you strongly to incorporate food safety practices in your operation. We're going to cover right now what are third-party audits, because there are some retailers that are requiring third-party audits for their growers that sell to them, like Meijer and Walmart. You think, I'm never going to sell for Meijer and Walmart. Why is he covering this today? But I really want you to consider food safety as part of what you do, because you are the single most important protectors of food safety, and that is the producers. You are first in the line of defense with regards to food safety. So we're going to cover not only what are third-party audits, but what are gaps. How do I know if I need gaps, and what kind of changes might I need to make to be gap compliant? And if I have questions about gaps, who do I talk to? Okay? So first of all, third-party audits are audits performed by individuals who are not the buyer and not the seller. Okay, so there's a company outside of the two, buyer and seller, that comes and looks at your farm, audits your farm, inspects your farm, and then essentially says, okay, you meet certain criteria, and gives you a certification. Okay, the consequence of failure for an audit is just loss of sale. It has nothing to do with getting thrown in jail. You just can't sell your product. Okay, small price to pay, right? The other fun thing is that these are often done in the middle of harvest season. So you can imagine as you're picking the product, getting it loaded up on the truck, ready to take it to market, and then the auditor says, sorry, you can't take that to market because you didn't pass your audit. So, good? Yeah. So, good agricultural practices, or GAPs, are a generally agreed upon set of safety, not regulations, they're safety standards that look at your whole farm. They include irrigation and wash water sources, manure sources, uses, and handling of manure, as well as employee training and hygiene, and then finally, how do you handle your product after it's been harvested, and farm and equipment sanitation. So those things are really what's covered. Most of you are not going to need gaps if you don't sell to Meijer or Walmart, but you need to ask your buyer. If you are selling to another retailer, you need to ask what kind of food safety regulations or food safety standards they look for. Big buyers may or may not require them before you sell to them, and then direct markets usually don't require GAP certification. Okay. Changes to comply with GAPs. Really, the changes are really specific to the farm, and you need to understand that one farm may have to make some changes that other farms may not have to make. And it's also specific to the crop being grown, but they can include periodic water testing, avoiding applying manure less than 120 days from harvest. How many folks use manure in their operations? Got a couple. Okay. A good practice, doesn't matter if you want to be GAP certified or not, a good practice is not to apply manure less than 2 weeks prior to planting, and make sure that there is at least 120 days from the time of application to the time of harvest for that crop. Okay? That does mean that you apply manure in the fall, that it doesn't offer as much benefit to the crops themselves, but the flip side is that it gives you a lot of greater safety. How many folks use compost? Okay, treat the compost like manure. Treat the compost like manure. You got a question?
I understand why you don't want to apply manure near the harvest time, but what's the problem with applying it before planting?
That's an excellent question. I think in some cases there's some concern depending on the crop. and I could be wrong on this, so bear with me. I think E. coli can actually infest into like tubers and stuff. So there's a concern if you're planting like potatoes, they want to give it enough time to kind of dissipate. Go ahead.
I just want to comment on manure application. What we need to follow is under right to farm is the manure, manure GAMS.
Right.
Generally accepted agricultural management practices. They're on the Michigan Department of Ag website.
Cool. Okay.
You said compost, treat compost as manure, even if it's municipality leaf.
I would treat, okay, here's the gaps. When we talk about compost has to be, in order to be considered safe, it needs to be composted for at least 15 days at 160 degrees. And you have to actually temp it every day and record the temperature every day.
Even though it's leaf.
Even though it's leaf, and you have to get the final product tested to ensure that it's free of generic E. coli.
So if you purchased it and brought it in, that was all done ahead of time, but it's safe.
Depending on the company should offer both the generic E. coli testing and should offer their records of having it kept at 160 degrees for at least 15 days. I know of at least 2 composting companies in West Michigan that do that. Morgan's does, as does IP over in Ottawa County.
Renewed Earth does.
What's that?
Renewed Earth.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm not guaranteeing that other companies don't do that, but there's 2 that I know of that absolutely do. Go ahead.
We apply raw manure.
Here we go.
On the vegetable ground.
This is where I'm going to get yelled at.
On the vegetable ground, 6 months ahead, that's the melon, tomato, zucchinis. On the sweet corn, we may have spread manure in April and plant in May, but sweet corn's not going to, I mean, that's a different crop, not laying on the ground. Is this a relatively safe way to do it?
Depends on who you're selling it to.
Well, we're selling at a farm market.
Okay, then it's relatively safe.
Yeah, I think we don't raise leafy greens because I don't.
You know, it just depends on, I'm serious, it doesn't make any sense. This is not about, I mean, you really have to suspend your sort of view on reality for a moment to understand this. When we look at what, and this is a bit of an aside, the CDC estimates that there are 76 million foodborne illness cases, outbreaks every year, okay? When they studied where those foodborne, they took about 10 years of data and they looked at where those foodborne illness cases came from. On average, there was about 120,000 per year that were being caused by fresh produce, okay? So we're talking about less than 2% of all of the foodborne illness cases every year are caused by fresh produce. And when you consider the amount of fresh produce that's being consumed by folks in a variety of places, and then you consider how much of it is handling issues. Somebody along the way when they're cutting it up forgot to wash the cutting board that had raw chicken on it and all that kind of stuff. You start to realize that fresh produce is an extremely safe thing to start with. So a lot of these things are incredibly needless in my mind. But we do it to absolutely ensure that we give a safe product. Because if we don't do this, and somebody does sue us, or if we don't do this, and a market, the entire market goes to heck because people think that the produce is somehow infested with E. coli. We lose, for instance, like in 2006, $50 million for the tomato industry, and it wasn't tomatoes. Okay? Or $100 million in strawberries in 1996, and it wasn't strawberries. So that's why this is so important, because the industry can't sustain those kind of hits. So, okay, where can you go for more information? We have a network of trained educators near you. Norm Myers up in Oceana County, there's 2, Bill Steenwhite, who's here today, as well as Carlos Garcia, who's not, are both trained educators in GAPS. I'm kind of the statewide, I'm the only one who has very specific, you need to do gaps. You need to work on pre-harvest stuff. That's me. So they told me I have to. So I'm right here. You can call me at any time. The other thing that I'm going to encourage you to do is go to our website. One of the things that we have, let me see if it'll go. One of the things that we have, I know you can go, hang on, is we actually do an agri-food safety minute, and there are wireless networks, and you are going to go, because I'm going to show you, by gosh. I'll let it in, here you are. I'm going to connect anyway. Go to gaps.msube.msu.msu.edu. We do an agri-food safety minute, which is one simple thing you can do every week to help bring yourself closer to GAP compliance. And we give, like a 2 or 3 minute video talking about a specific something, and then guidance documents and record sheets to help bring you closer. It's really good, and it helps you get that much closer. Now I know you'll go. So, okay. There we go. Okay, so if I go here, you can find the information. Gotta open up. I'm eating into your break, aren't I? Better than lunch.
It's their break.
Their break. So basically, their key takeaways, they're relatively agreed upon food safety standards. You don't need them unless your buyer says you need them, so check with your buyer. If you need them, you'll need to think about how the food you grow could get contaminated with foodborne illness pathogens, and if you need them, there's a network of folks here to help.